Title. God says, your recent action was so powerful that God released a beloved, listen closely, not just with your ears, but with your spirit. There are moments in life that seem small to the human eye, quiet decisions, unseen sacrifices, silent prayers whispered in the dark. But heaven does not measure as the world measures. What you thought was just one more step, what you thought was just trying your best, God says it shook eternity. Yes, your recent action was so powerful that it moved the heart of God. You didn't just act, you aligned. You didn't just endure, you trusted. You didn't just stand, you stood when everything in you wanted to fall. And God says, because of that, something has been released. Not delayed, not pending. Released. You see, there is a spiritual law many forget. Obedience unlocks what effort alone cannot. When you chose integrity over convenience, when you chose faith over fear, when you chose to keep going without applause, heaven took notice. God is not moved by noise. He is moved by sincerity. He is moved by obedience in obscurity. And what has been released is not small. It is favor that cannot be explained. It is strength you didn't have yesterday. It is doors that logic said would remain closed. It is peace that defies the chaos around you. Some of you are about to step into moments where you will ask, why is this happening for me? And God says, because I saw what you did when no one else was watching. Do not underestimate the power of your last decision. Do not dismiss the weight of your last sacrifice. There are blessings that are not triggered by perfection, but by persistence. There are breakthroughs that are not earned by greatness, but by faithfulness in the small things. And hear this clearly. What God has released, no person can reverse. What God has initiated, no obstacle can cancel, but you must remain anchored. Do not go back to doubt now. Do not shrink now. Do not question now what God has already confirmed in the Spirit. Walk like someone who knows something has shifted. Speak like someone who believes heaven has responded. Stand like someone who understands that what's coming is not random, it is a divine response. This is not luck. This is not coincidence. Beloved, listen closely, not just with your ears, but with your spirit, because there are dimensions of truth that cannot be understood by logic alone. There are movements in your life that cannot be explained by human reasoning, and what you are experiencing right now is one of those moments where the natural and the supernatural begin to intersect in a way that changes everything. You may have thought it was just a simple decision. You may have told yourself it was nothing extraordinary, nothing worth remembering, nothing worth acknowledging. It didn't come with applause. It didn't come with recognition. No one stood up to celebrate you. No one paused to affirm what you were doing. In fact, it may have felt like no one even noticed. But what you could not see, what you could not hear, what you could not measure, in that moment heaven was watching with full attention. Because in that moment you were being tested in a way that didn't look like a test. You were being weighed in a place where there was no audience. You were being called to choose when it would have been easier to walk away, easier to compromise, easier to delay, easier to give in to the pressure pressing against your soul. And yet, something within you refused to surrender. Something within you held the line. Something within you said, even if it's hard, even if it costs me, I will still do what is right. That moment, yes, that very moment carried more weight than you realized. Because God is not looking for grand performances. He is not searching for perfection wrapped in visibility. He is looking for authenticity rooted in obedience. He is looking for hearts that remain aligned even when circumstances are not. And when you chose to act the way you did, you stepped into alignment with something eternal. You didn't just make a decision, you made a declaration in the Spirit. A declaration that said your faith is not conditional. A declaration that said your integrity is not negotiable. A declaration that said your trust in God is not dependent on comfort, timing, or visible results. And that kind of declaration does not remain unanswered, because every act of obedience releases a sound in the Spirit. It echoes beyond what your ears can hear. It moves beyond what your eyes can see. It travels into realms where divine responses are initiated, where shifts begin, where things that were once held back begin to move forward. What you did created movement. Movement in places you didn't even know were connected to your life. Movement in situations you had already given up on. Movement in opportunities that seemed permanently closed. Movement in hearts, in timing, in alignment, in favor that had been waiting for the right moment to be released. And the power of it is this: you didn't force it. You didn't manipulate it. You didn't strive to make it happen. You simply obeyed. There is a difference between striving and aligning. Striving exhausts you because it relies on your strength. Aligning positions you because it connects you to God's power. And in that moment, whether you realized it or not, you stopped striving and you started aligning. That is why it carried weight. That is why it mattered. That is why heaven responded. Because obedience in the unseen is one of the rarest forms of faith. It is easy to stand firm when everyone is watching. It is easy to speak boldly when there is affirmation around you. It is easy to do what is right when the outcome is guaranteed. But to choose what is right when there is silence, when there is uncertainty, when there is no immediate reward, that is where true faith is revealed. And you revealed it, not in words but in action, not in theory but in reality, not in comfort but in pressure. And pressure has a way of exposing what is truly within a person. It removes the masks. It strips away the performance. It reveals whether your foundation is built on convenience or conviction. And in that moment, your foundation spoke. It spoke louder than fear. It spoke louder than doubt. It spoke louder than every voice that tried to convince you to do otherwise. And God heard that. Understand this deeply. God responds to what is real. He responds to what is genuine. He responds to what flows from a place of truth within you. And when you acted the way you did, you were not pretending. You were not trying to impress. You were not trying to earn approval. You were simply being faithful in the moment that was in front of you. And faithfulness, even in its smallest form, carries the power to unlock things that have been held back for a long time. There are things connected to your life that are not activated by time alone. They are not activated by effort alone. They are activated by moments, specific moments where your response determines what happens next. And that was one of those moments, a defining moment, a turning point disguised as an ordinary situation. You may not have felt it shift immediately. You may not have seen anything change right away. In fact, it may have looked like nothing happened at all. But the absence of visible change does not mean the absence of movement. It simply means the movement began in a place you cannot yet see, because God often works beneath the surface before he reveals anything above it. He establishes before he exposes. He prepares before he presents. And what you did gave him something to work with. It gave him permission to move in ways that require alignment. It gave him reason to release what requires trust. You gave him access to areas of your life that only obedience can unlock. And now, even if you don't fully understand it yet, something has shifted. Something has been set into motion. Something has begun to unfold in response to what you did, whether you feel it or not, whether you see it or not, whether you understand it or not. And God says, because of that moment, because of that choice, because of that act that seemed so small yet carried such weight in the spirit, something has already been released. This was not a future decision. This was not something waiting on approval. It did not remain suspended in uncertainty. The moment your obedience aligned with his will, heaven responded without delay. You must understand this truth deeply. God is not hesitant when it comes to responding to genuine obedience. There is no reluctance in him. There is no indecision. When the condition is met, the response is activated. And what you triggered was not symbolic. It was not emotional. It was not just a feeling meant to comfort you. It was a real spiritual release that has already begun to manifest in ways you cannot yet fully perceive. Something has shifted in your favor, not because circumstances suddenly changed, but because alignment changed. And when alignment changes, outcomes begin to follow. What once resisted you will not resist you the same way anymore. What once delayed you will not hold the same authority over your path anymore. What once felt locked will begin to respond differently, not always immediately, not always obviously, but undeniably over time. God says what has been released carries layers. It is not just one thing. It is not just a single answer to a single situation. It is a flow. It is a movement that touches multiple areas of your life at once. You may recognize it first in one place, but its influence will begin to appear in others. Favor has been released. Not the kind of favor that is loud and attention-seeking, but the kind that quietly rearranges outcomes. The kind that causes things to work in your direction without needing to announce itself. The kind that places you in the right place at the right time without you forcing it. The kind that causes people to respond differently, to open up, to consider, to support, to shift in ways that even they may not fully understand. Strength has been released. a strength that does not come from your physical ability or emotional state, but from a deeper source. You will notice it in moments where you would have once felt overwhelmed, yet now you remain steady. You will notice it when pressure comes, yet something within you refuses to collapse under it. This is not accidental. This is the result of what has been activated through your obedience. Clarity has been released. Where there was confusion, there will begin to be direction. Where there were too many questions, there will begin to be understanding. It may not all come at once, but piece by piece, step by step, you will start to see what you could not see before. Paths that once looked uncertain will begin to make sense. Decisions that once felt heavy will begin to feel guided. And doors, yes, doors have been affected by this release. There are opportunities that were previously inaccessible, not because you were unworthy, but because the timing and alignment were not yet complete. But now something has changed. Some doors will open gradually, almost as if they were always meant to. Others will open suddenly, in ways that catch you off guard. And there may be doors that close as well, not as a loss, but as protection, as redirection. As part of a greater alignment you could not have orchestrated on your own. God says do not measure this release by immediate visibility, because what has been released is not limited to what you can see right now. Some of it is already moving behind the scenes. Some of it is working through people, through timing, through sequences of events that are aligning in ways too complex for you to trace. And if you try to evaluate it too quickly, you may miss its depth. This is why patience is required in this season. Not passive waiting, but anchored trust. The kind of patience that remains steady even when nothing appears to be happening. The kind of patience that understands that movement does not always look like motion. The kind of patience that refuses to doubt what God has already initiated. Because doubt has a way of disconnecting you from what has already been given. And God says, do not disconnect now. Do not question whether it really happened. Do not allow delay to convince you that nothing was released. Do not let silence make you assume that heaven did not respond. The response has already taken place. The release has already occurred. And now you are in the phase where it begins to unfold. But here is what you must guard. You must guard your alignment must remain. Because what you access through obedience is sustained through consistency. You cannot step into alignment in one moment and then step out of it in the next and expect the same flow to continue uninterrupted. This is not about perfection, but it is about awareness. It is about remaining conscious of how you move, how you respond, how you choose in the moments that follow. Every step forward now carries significance. Every decision continues to build on what has already been released. Every response either strengthens the flow or disrupts it. And God is inviting you into a deeper level of awareness, not fear, not pressure, but understanding. Understanding that your life is not random. Understanding that your actions carry weight. Understanding that what you do in the natural continues to interact with what has been set in motion in the spiritual. This is a partnership, not where you control the outcome, but where your alignment allows the outcome to unfold as it was intended. And even now, there are things adjusting around you. Conversations are being influenced. Timelines are being rearranged. Obstacles are being weakened. Paths are being cleared in ways you cannot yet trace or predict, but they are happening with precision, with intention, with purpose connected to that moment when you chose to act in alignment, and this is why you must stay grounded in what you know. Even when you cannot yet see the full picture, you must now come to understand that what has been set into motion is not fragile, but your position within it still matters. Because there is a difference between something being released and something being fully received. The release has already taken place, but the receiving is a process that unfolds through your continued alignment, your awareness, and your willingness to remain anchored even when your surroundings try to pull you in another direction. God says many people reach this point and become uncertain. They begin to question what they once felt clearly. They begin to analyze what was meant to be trusted. They begin to measure what was never designed to be measured in human terms, and in doing so, they slowly disconnect themselves not from God's willingness, but from their own positioning. You must not fall into that pattern, because what you are stepping into requires stability within you, not perfection, but stability. A steadiness of mind, a steadiness of spirit, a steadiness in the way you carry what you now know has shifted. This is not about becoming someone different overnight. This is about becoming more aware of who you already are, in alignment with what has been released. There will be moments where nothing around you confirms what you feel within you. Moments where the external environment seems unchanged. Moments where old patterns try to reappear, where familiar pressures try to return, where doubt attempts to speak in a voice that sounds convincing because it is familiar, but familiar does not mean true. And God says, do not let what is familiar override what has been revealed, because what has been revealed to you did not come from your imagination. It did not come from wishful thinking. It came from a moment of alignment that connected you to something real, something active, something already in motion. And now your role is to remain grounded in that truth, even when your senses are not yet catching up to it. This is where discipline begins to matter. Not discipline in a rigid, restrictive sense, but discipline in your focus. Discipline in what you allow your mind to dwell on. Discipline in what you choose to believe when multiple voices are present within you. Because your thoughts have the power to either reinforce your alignment or weaken it. If you constantly rehearse doubt, you will begin to feel disconnected. If you constantly revisit fear, you will begin to hesitate. If you constantly question what has already been set into motion, you will begin to lose the clarity that was given to you. And God says, guard your clarity. Guard it with intention. Guard it with awareness, because clarity is not always loud. It does not always demand your attention. Sometimes it is quiet, steady, and easily overshadowed by louder emotions if you are not careful. But it is that quiet clarity that keeps you aligned when everything else feels uncertain. You must also understand that growth is taking place within you as part of this process. What has been released is not only affecting your circumstances, it is shaping your capacity. It is expanding your ability to carry more, to handle more, to step into spaces that would have once overwhelmed you. And growth can feel uncomfortable at times. It can feel unfamiliar. It can feel like you are being stretched beyond what you are used to. But stretching is not breaking. It is preparation. It is expansion. It is the necessary adjustment that allows you to step into what is already moving toward you. And as this growth continues, you may notice that your responses begin to change. Things that once triggered you may not affect you the same way anymore. Situations that once drained you may no longer have the same hold over you. You may find yourself pausing where you once reacted, thinking where you once rushed, discerning where you once assumed. This is not accidental. This is evidence that something within you is aligning at a deeper level. And God says, do not resist this change. Do not try to return to who you were simply because it feels more familiar. Do not shrink back into old patterns just because they are comfortable. Because what is being formed within you now is necessary for where you are going. There is also a responsibility that comes with what has been released. Not a burden, but a responsibility. A responsibility to carry it with awareness. A responsibility to not treat it casually. A responsibility to recognize that what has been set into motion is connected to purpose, not just personal benefit. Because what flows into your life is not meant to stop with you. It is meant to move through you. It is meant to impact others, to influence environments, to create ripples beyond what you can immediately see. And this is why your alignment matters not just for you, but for what is connected to you. Every step you take now has influence. Every decision you make now carries weight beyond the immediate moment. Every response you choose now contributes to the unfolding of something larger than yourself. And while you may not see the full picture yet, you are actively participating in it, even now. Even in the small choices, even in the quiet moments where it feels like nothing significant is happening. Because significance is not always loud. It is often hidden in consistency, hidden in the daily decision to remain aligned, hidden in the repeated choice to trust what God has already initiated instead of reverting back to what feels safe. And God says, stay with it, stay steady in it, stay aware of it. Because what has been released is still unfolding, still moving, still aligning in ways that are beyond your current understanding but fully within His control. There is something you must come to terms with in this phase of your journey, and it is this. Once God has initiated a movement in your life, the greatest challenge is no longer whether it will happen, but whether you will remain in the posture required to walk it out. Because initiation is divine, but participation is yours. What has already been set into motion carries certainty, but your experience within it is shaped by how you continue to respond. God says many begin well, but they lose their grounding when the process does not unfold according to their expectations. They anticipate immediate transformation, instant visibility, quick confirmation. And when those things do not appear right away, they begin to shift internally, not always outwardly, not always in ways others can see, but internally they begin to loosen their grip on what they once held firmly. That subtle shift is where many lose their way, not because God withdrew, not because the release was reversed, but because their focus became divided. You must understand that focus is not just about what you look at, it is about what you prioritize within your mind and spirit. It is about what you give authority to influence your perception. And in this stage, your focus will be tested in quiet, persistent ways. Distractions will not always appear as obvious interruptions. Sometimes they will come disguised as reasonable concerns, thoughts that sound logical, questions that seem valid, scenarios that appear worth considering. But if those thoughts pull you away from what God has already revealed, they are not serving you, they are redirecting you. God says, be discerning. Not everything that makes sense is aligned. Not everything that feels urgent is necessary. Not everything that captures your attention deserves your agreement. Because where your attention goes, your energy follows. And where your energy flows, your alignment is either strengthened or weakened. This is why guarding your internal state is essential. Because long before anything shifts externally, there are shifts happening within you. And those internal shifts determine how you interpret what is happening around you. The same situation can either reinforce your faith or challenge it, depending on the condition of your focus. If your focus remains anchored, you will see movement even in stillness. If your focus becomes scattered, you will miss movement even when it is happening. God says, do not let your perception be shaped by impatience. Impatience has a way of distorting reality. It magnifies what is not happening and minimizes what is. It causes you to overlook progress because it is not happening at the speed you expected. It tempts you to intervene, to force, to control, to step outside of alignment in an attempt to accelerate what is already moving at the right pace. But what is divinely timed cannot be rushed without consequence, because timing is not just about when something happens, it is about the condition in which it happens. It is about readiness, alignment, positioning, and the synchronization of multiple elements that must come together in order for the outcome to be sustained. And God is not interested in temporary outcomes. He is establishing something that will hold, something that will not collapse under pressure, something that will not fade when challenged, something that will not require constant striving to maintain. And that kind of outcome requires precise timing, which means there will be moments where you are asked to wait, not because nothing is happening, but because everything is being arranged. Moments where you are asked to trust, not because the path is unclear, but because the clarity you have is enough for the step you are on. Moments where you are asked to remain steady, not because you are stuck, but because you are being positioned. And positioning often feels like stillness when you do not understand what is taking place beneath the surface. But God says there is movement beneath what you perceive as stillness. There are adjustments being made, connections being formed, barriers being removed, details being aligned with precision that does not require your intervention, only your trust. This is where surrender becomes powerful. Not surrender as in giving up, but surrender as in releasing the need to control what God has already taken responsibility for. Releasing the need to figure out every detail. Releasing the need to see every step before you take it, because control is often a response to uncertainty. But trust is a response to revelation. And you have already been given enough revelation to trust what is happening now. God says, do not revert back to control. Do not pick up what you have already placed in His hands. Do not try to manage outcomes that are beyond your capacity to sustain, because what He is doing does not require your control, it requires your cooperation. And cooperation looks like consistency. It looks like continuing to move forward in alignment even when you do not see immediate results. It looks like maintaining your integrity even when shortcuts seem available. It looks like choosing peace over panic, trust over fear, clarity over confusion. These choices may seem small in the moment, but they are not insignificant. They are the very things that keep you positioned within the flow of what has already been released. And as you remain consistent, something begins to happen within you. Your confidence becomes quieter but stronger. Your trust becomes deeper but less dependent on external validation. Your awareness becomes sharper, allowing you to discern what matters and what does not. And without realizing it, you begin to walk differently, not with arrogance, not with force, but with a steady assurance that does not need to prove itself, because it is rooted in something that is already in motion, already established, already unfolding according to a plan that does not require constant adjustment from you, and this is where many begin to notice a shift, not because everything around them has fully changed yet, but because they themselves are no longer responding the same way to what once unsettled them, and now you are entering a phase where the evidence will begin to surface, not all at once. Not in overwhelming displays, but in precise, intentional ways that confirm what has already been set into motion. God says this is where many fail to recognize the manifestation because they are expecting something dramatic, something undeniable, something that forces belief. But what he releases often reveals itself in ways that require awareness, not assumption. You must train your perception to notice what is shifting, because the evidence will not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it will appear as a subtle change in how things respond to you, a conversation that goes differently than expected. A delay that once frustrated you now redirecting you toward something better. A door that opens quietly without resistance. A connection that forms naturally without effort. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations. But if your mind is still conditioned to look for something extreme, you may overlook the significance of what is already unfolding. And God says, do not overlook this phase, because this is where your trust deepens. This is where your awareness sharpens. This is where you begin to recognize his movement not just in the extraordinary, but in the precise details of your everyday life. Because divine movement is often detailed. It is intentional. It is specific. It is not random, and it does not waste motion. Every shift you begin to notice is connected. Every change, no matter how small it seems, is part of a larger unfolding that you are only seeing in part. And God says you are not meant to see all of it at once, because if you did, it would overwhelm your current capacity. Instead, you are given glimpses enough to confirm, enough to guide, enough to strengthen your trust without removing your need for it. This is the balance of faith. To see enough to move forward, but not everything. To understand enough to continue, but not so much that you become dependent on understanding instead of trust. And as this evidence begins to appear, you must also remain grounded in humility. Because it is easy, in moments of confirmation, to shift your focus back onto yourself, to begin to think it was your ability, your timing, your strategy that caused these things to happen. But God says, do not misinterpret the source. Yes, your obedience mattered. Yes, your alignment positioned you. But the release, the movement, the orchestration, those came from him. And staying aware of that keeps you aligned. Because pride subtly disconnects. It shifts your dependence away from God and back onto yourself. It convinces you that you can now manage what was never yours to control. And in doing so, it disrupts the flow that was never designed to operate through self-reliance. So remain aware. Remain grounded. Remain conscious of the source of what is unfolding. At the same time, do not diminish what you are experiencing. Do not talk yourself out of recognizing progress. Do not downplay the shifts as insignificant just because they are not yet complete. Because incomplete does not mean unimportant. Partial manifestation is still manifestation, and acknowledging it strengthens your alignment with what is continuing to unfold. God says this is also a phase where your environment may begin to respond differently to you. People may notice something has changed, even if they cannot explain it. Opportunities may begin to present themselves in ways that feel aligned without being forced. Situations that once felt complicated may begin to simplify. And you may find yourself in moments where things just seem to work not perfectly, not without effort, but with a level of flow that was not present before. This is part of the release. This is the evidence of movement. And yet, even as this begins to happen, you must not become passive, because flow does not mean inactivity. It does not mean you stop showing up. It does not mean you stop making intentional choices. It means your effort is now aligned, not forced. It means your actions are now supported, not resisted. It means what you do carries a different kind of weight because it is connected to something that is already in motion. So continue to act. Continue to move. Continue to respond with awareness. Because what has been released is not meant to replace your participation, it is meant to empower it. And as you move forward in this phase, you will also begin to notice a deeper sense of peace emerging within you. Not because everything is resolved, not because every question has been answered, but because something within you recognizes that you are no longer where you were, that something has shifted, that something is working even when you cannot fully explain how, and that peace is not accidental. It is another form of confirmation, a confirmation that you are in alignment, a confirmation that you are moving with what has been released, not against it. And the more you remain aware of this, the more natural it will become. You will begin to trust without forcing yourself to. You will begin to recognize without overanalyzing. You will begin to move forward without the same level of resistance that once held you back. Because what was released has not only begun to affect your circumstances, it has begun to transform your internal state. And that internal transformation is what allows you to sustain what is still unfolding in front of you.